Hi, everyone. Welcome, all my beautiful people and fantastic subscribers. I so appreciate each and every one of you. As soon as my Patreon is up, I will link that in the description below. But I'm so excited that we are growing and more people are watching. But today, I want to talk about moms who kill and why. Why do they do it? So I have 3 cases that are very, very similar. And as I have discussed in the past in another episode about Lindsay Clancy and the strangulation of her 3 children and her attempted suicide, she was suffering postpartum depression. She was 32 years old, very successful nurse, came from a well-to-do family. She was well educated. No signs of any issues other than the postpartum depression. So I have stated this before. Postpartum depression is real. So real. If you do not have someone to reach out to, if people are around you and they don't understand what you're going through, please try to find a therapist, go to a hospital, just do what you can. Now you can get therapy online through Instagram. I know it sounds crazy, or maybe not crazy, but inconceivable that a mother would kill her own children. But I cannot reiterate to you enough how postpartum is so super real. And when you have postpartum, you also have suicidal tendencies. I am speaking literally from experience. I did not kill my child, but I did suffer postpartum depression, and it was horrible. It was horrible. I wanted to die. I wanted to not be on this earth. So, but I also didn't want to be without my son. So it's crazy. But it does kind of give you an idea of what women think about when they're suffering postpartum. They are literally not in the understanding or knowing what is going on. They will have good days or bad days. It is almost like any other depression, but worse, because you have other lives that you are actually thinking about. Whether you think these women are thinking about those lives or not, they actually are in their mind. In their mind, it makes sense. So let's get into this. I have 3 women, 3 mothers who killed their children, and not just killed their children, but in horrific suffering ways. So my first case that I want to talk about is Susan Smith. If you guys don't remember Susan Smith, it was in 1994 that Susan Smith did what she did to her children. She killed her 14-month-old and her other son, who was only, I think he was 2 years old. So she was from South Carolina. Now, the South Carolina law is clearly not as strict, I guess, or it wasn't back then in 1994. I remember this case vividly. It was all over the media. It was everywhere. She claimed that she had been carjacked, and she gave a description of a black male that carjacked her at an intersection and stole her car with her kids in it. So this is very complex because she made up a story. She lied. She lied to cover her tracks, basically. So was this postpartum depression? Because she had enough forethought to think about what her story was going to be. She went on the news, in the media, and was begging for people to find her children. So Susan Smith, who claimed mental health issues at the time, it really wasn't looked at that way because this was in the 90s. Okay, y'all. So mental health, postpartum depression, not a thing that we're talking about right now. And we're not even doing it right now in 2023. We are doing better about mental health, but what are the effects? And what are we doing to help stop it? So Susan Smith took her children out of the house, away from her husband, and killed them. She drowned them in a lake. She put the car in drive, put something on the gas pedal to keep it going, and go down into the lake with her children strapped into their car seats. They suffered. They drowned to death. It was horrible. I cannot imagine. I am deathly afraid of water. And that takes my breath away to know that what she did was so cruel and unusual. And she claimed she was going to kill herself and her kids, but she basically chickened out at the last minute and only killed her kids. Now, Susan Smith comes from a very poor background. Her life was not the best. I mean, she's in the South. She lived in poverty. Her mother married a man that sexually assaulted her, and apparently, as they say, it went up to 6 months prior to the murders. So Susan, in all respects, videos, family videos, everything, she was a wonderful mother. She was there for her kids. She loved her kids. She did all the things that a good mother should do, right? But at the end of the day, she also felt insecure. Okay, she was going through depression. She was suffering postpartum depression. She just had 2 kids pretty much back to back. Okay, now one is 2 and one is 14 months. So she didn't have time to recover from the first pregnancy and have that child before she had another child. Not to say she didn't love the children. I'm sure in some way she did love her kids. She was a good mother. She celebrated their birthdays. She did all the things. But she also was searching for something for herself. She was apparently having an affair with a man that didn't want the kids to be in the picture. And he didn't say he wanted her to get rid of her kids. He just said that he didn't want to be with someone who had kids. And it was a fun fling, but it's over now and let's move on. Well, Susan didn't want to move on, okay? Clearly her marriage wasn't what she wanted it to be. Clearly her childhood, her upbringing, her family wasn't what she wanted it to be. And this guy apparently gave her something that she was missing, okay? And a lot of times when you're depressed, you will look for an outlet, something that will help you. And apparently this helped her, was this guy. But she, in being selfish and only thinking of herself, she chose a route that she thought would eliminate her problems and help her get this guy back. In one of the news releases, she's actually wearing, and I'm an Auburn fan, y'all. I'm from Alabama, so war damn Eagle. But she's wearing an Auburn shirt because a sweatshirt because the guy she was cheating on her husband with went to Auburn or was a professor at Auburn or something like that. But she's seen wearing this shirt, and that's a message. She's giving him a message like, I have your shirt. I want to be with you. Now the problem is solved. Come to rescue me. But he, of course, didn't want any part of that. So the husband, Susan Smith, they're begging the media for any help in recovering the children, any help in identifying this carjacker. She is going and holding out all the stuff. She's just doing it all everything she can possibly do. So is this postpartum depression? Is this premeditated? Is this clear thinking? Is she in her right mind? Does she understand what she has done? Now, at the time Susan Smith did this, she was only in her 20s. And now she is going to be up for parole in November of 2024. Can you believe that? They only gave her 30 years to life. So she can be up for parole next year for just horrifically killing her 2 children in the most awful manner. I mean, I know when we talk about each of these cases, all of these children died suffering deaths at the hands of their own mothers. So what can we do? What is the answer? Susan Smith was in her 20s. She was sexually abused. She came from a bad background. She was poor. Her husband was struggling to keep things together for the family, but he was a good husband and a good father for the most part. It was Susan who just had these mental health problems and wanted to go out on her own and not have to be tied down with all of this stuff. So the reason I talk about what Susan Smith was going through and her mental state is because she may have had the more, I want to say, awareness out of the three women. I'm not sure. You decide. You decide who has more awareness. But Susan Smith was aware enough that she made up a story, drew a composite. She went on the media and just went all out. Okay. She never backed down. She doubled down. All right. So she was found to have major depression and a depressive personality disorder. But that did not change what she had done. So she was punished. She is up for parole in November of 2024. So we shall see. I do believe that her ex-husband, David, who has moved on with his life, will probably try to stop her parole. I would think. I don't know how she could live without her children. I don't know how that can be done. So, but I'm not here to judge. I'm just here. I'm comparing these stories. I know what postpartum depression feels like. I know many, many women out there know what postpartum depression feels like. I know if you already suffer from any type of anxiety and depression, postpartum does not help that at all. So let's move on from Susan Smith to just a few years later. In 2001, not a few years, but several years later, in 2001, 21 years ago, Andrea Yates from the state of Texas, she had 5 children, y'all. 5 children. She drowned all of her kids, all of them. In her mind at the time, she felt they would be better off dead. She felt that they would be better off not raised in this world. She thought if they were raised here, they would go to hell and they wouldn't be given the proper life they needed, and they wouldn't be. So she took it in a whole different way. She too drowned her children. She drowned all 5 of them. She did this while her husband was at work. She was suffering postpartum depression. She was having conversations about depression. She was having conversations about her mental health. She was hearing voices. She was the whole gamut, okay, of all mental health issues. She is a German immigrant's parents. Her parents were German immigrants who were Irish immigrants. It's weird, German-Irish. And she suffered from bulimia, depression. During her teenage years, she also wanted to commit suicide. She tried to commit suicide. She spoke about it. She was the class valedictorian. So she was very smart. She was captain of the swim team. She was in the honor society. She had a little bit better life than Susan Smith. She also worked as a registered nurse. So strange, right? Strange comparison. Lindsay Clancy was a nurse. Andrea Yates, nurse. And Susan Smith wasn't a nurse, but she too had, issues with suicide. And so the thing is that Andrea Yates had a little bit better life. She had better chances. She had better stuff put before her. She was class valedictorian. She was a nurse. She was captain of her swim team. She was married to a NASA engineer. So you would think, again, perfect family, right? Perfect life. What could you ask for? What could you want? They were devout Christians. She had everything that she could possibly want, all the tools in her tool shed, but ended up having a nervous breakdown and postpartum psychosis. Now, postpartum psychosis is different than postpartum depression and a lot rarer. So postpartum psychosis means that you possibly hear voices, or you're not all there in the head for sure. So what she did was she waited for her husband to go to work. Her doctor was against her having her supervised around the clock. She had been scheduled to, her doctor actually thought she needed to be supervised around the clock. Sorry. And her husband's mom was supposed to arrive within the hour of him leaving for work. So she wasn't going to be alone long. So she didn't have much time to do what she did, which is kill all 5 of her children. So she took the time between her husband leaving and her mother-in-law arriving to kill the kids. She drowned them. She left them floating in the tub. Her kids came in and they were asking what's going on, what's wrong. But she would catch each and every child and drown them in the bathtub. So the kids were aware. They knew. Her kids saw what was happening and they tried to run away, but where were they going to go? So she, confessed to drowning her children. She said that she purposefully waited for her husband to leave for work that morning and filled the bathtub. So she had the forethought to fill the tub. She had the forethought to wait for her husband to leave. She kept the family dog locked up. She did things that were unusual for her to do or to be done in that home so that she could accomplish this act of killing all of her kids. Now, she is claiming that she was suffering postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis. She was claiming that her children would be better off. She did not try to kill herself, but she called her husband and told him to come home right away. So she had the forethought enough to not take her own life, which is, what Susan Smith claimed, also what Lindsay Clancy did attempt to do. And Andrea Yates did not do that. She just killed her kids. But again, postpartum depression is real, y'all. You can have tons of kids and it'll be that one pregnancy, that one labor, that one delivery that will just push you over the edge. 5 kids is a lot. Oh my gosh. Even if she did have what seemed to be a pretty decent life, married to a NASA engineer, she's a nurse, which is another thing that baffles me about these nurses is why they would let their kids suffer such a horrific, horrific death. Like, you can't possibly be in your right mind to think that that's the way that you should take care of your children. So this happened in Texas. So she has no chance for parole. She is serving a life sentence without a chance for parole. So the medical community for Andrea Yates say that, her doctor was responsible for recognizing her signs and that, he should have been able to stop this from happening. Basically, they should have possibly put her into a mental care facility or something to get her past this point so that she would not have done this. But they also blame the Blue Cross Blue Shield, saying that they wouldn't offer her more than a 10-day psychiatric hospitalization because of their, that's just all they'll pay for. So I think the times are different now. I'm hoping the times are different. I hope things are getting better for mental health issues and being addressed. I hope anyone hearing this, if you work for an insurance company, think of postpartum depression as a coverage, okay? Women need it. They need help. This is not something new. You have Susan Smith in 1994, you have Andrea Yates in 2001, and now we have Lindsay Clancy in 2023. So she was 32 years old. She had 3 children. One she just had that was only 8 months old. And she waited till she got rid of her husband to go out long enough to go to the drugstore and go get their dinner. And she was able to accomplish this act of strangling all 3 of her children and trying to kill herself in the basically hour window. So here we have Andrea Yates, who killed her children in the time it took her husband to leave for work and the mother-in-law to show up, but she still called her husband and said, "Get home now." And then we have Lindsay Clancy, who strangled all 3 of her children, and she too was suffering postpartum depression. She too had suicidal thoughts. She too came from a successful family, was a nurse, had what appeared to be the perfect home life. Everyone said she was the perfect mother, that she was the mother they wished they could be. So if this can happen to what seemingly is a normal person in what we consider normal, two parent married family household that are not struggling, they're doing pretty well. They're not rich by any means, but they are your typical middle class, what we used to think was typical middle class families. Okay, and here they are killing their kids. So the comparisons that I see in all of these situations is the postpartum depression, is the closeness of age the children were, and is the fact that they were all married. They all had husbands who provided. They were all complimented as being wonderful mothers. Lindsay Clancy is in Massachusetts. That's where her charges are. That's where she did the murders. So she will face life in prison. But what I want to highlight with this situation is postpartum depression. I want to highlight that this is real. I also want to make it known that, these children no longer live and breathe. So there are 10 kids that have passed away, that were murdered in horrific ways by their own mothers. Drowned, strangled. So what causes this? I would love to have anyone comment. Please let me know your thoughts. Do you think these are just evil women who killed their kids, or were they suffering some sort of mental break? Did they not get the help they needed? Could it have been prevented? Could all of this have been prevented? Could we stop it? Who would stop it? Who's responsible? I mean, if you can't be or trust your own parent, who can you trust, right? So I just want to make everyone aware that postpartum depression is real. Not all postpartum depression leads to murdering your children, but I believe that in 2023, Lindsay Clancy will have a better case or better defense than Susan Smith did in 1994 and Andrea Yates had in 2001, because we're more aware of mental health issues today. However, the prosecution is coming at her hard, and they are saying she was having one of the best days ever. We've already had this discussion with depression. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. You can be seemingly perfectly normal to other people the way they consider normal. But on the inside, you could be fighting yourself, fighting every demon you have, fighting what your brain is telling you, fighting, and you just fail. You just don't win. So you cannot judge. No one can judge someone's mental capacity, and it's not right. It's not right. It's not right for anyone to say, that she did this out of malice and forethought. Now, did any of these women have thoughts in their minds of taking their children's lives? Of course they did. They did it. Did these women think that they were doing what was best for their children in their minds? I think they were. They were thinking that they were doing what's best for their kids at the time in that moment. Susan Smith is a little bit different. Susan Smith had, like I said, not the best life. But she did have a husband who cared about her and loved those boys. Susan Smith's reasoning was a little more, I'm going to say, selfish than Andrea Yates and Lindsay Clancy. You guys can please put your comments and opinions below. I want to hear, but I also want to hear your stories. If anyone out there has suffered postpartum depression, what did you do to get through it? What help was available for you? I can tell you, when I suffered my postpartum depression, the only help available for me at that time was to go to the crazy floor, the psych floor. And I was able to leave whenever I wanted. I could check myself out, and I did. I did not want to be there, and I checked myself right on out. So that was in 2000. So Andrea Yates killed her 5 children in 2001. In 2000, I had my second child and suffered severe postpartum depression. And I tried to take my own life. And I ended up in the psych ward, in the hospital. And they told me if I didn't want to be there, I didn't have to be there. So I didn't even spend one night, I don't think. I don't think I even spent one night. So did I get the help that I needed? I guess you guys can be the judge of that. Do I look normal to you? I didn't hurt my son, and I didn't successfully hurt myself. So, but were there issues? Yes. Could people have been more understanding and aware and knowledgeable of what was going on at the time? I think they could have. I don't think that I got the help that I needed at that time. I think I had to kind of work that stuff out on my own. So what can we do? Who's responsible? What can we do as a society to highlight what's going on? And I don't want, I'm totally fine if you are for, if you're pro-abortion, what have you. I know a lot of women out there, my body, my choice, and they were all pro-abortion, and these women wouldn't have been in these situations if they just not had those kids. But these women wanted their children, okay? They wanted to be family. They wanted to be married, have kids, do the whole thing. So that's not the answer, okay? So not having the children is not the answer. I just can't. This is a mental break. This is a situation where all 3 of these women mentally broke. Susan Smith, again, I'm going to say a little more selfish than the other 2, but she was also younger. So maybe she wasn't all in her, full matured mind before she started having kids and being married and, just trying to figure herself out. And unfortunately, her kids were the into that choice she made. So I will say, what do you guys think? I mean, 2 nurses drowning, strangling their children, one mom drowning her children, all of these happening within about 10 years of each other. Not to say that's a relation, but it's odd, right? 1994, 2001, 2023. Well, 2001, 2023 is a little more than 10 years. But look, I'm not good at math, but let me just say the comparisons mentally are there. And again, want to raise awareness for mental health issues and what we can do as a society to understand what's going on and not just assume people are cold-hearted, calculated murderers. What they did was horrific. That does not change. How they killed their children, the fact that they killed their children is horrific. But how can we use this as a learning lesson and honor these children by making everyone aware that postpartum depression is a thing. And if we don't help people, we don't listen, really, really, really listen, and stop just seeing what we want to see, we will continuously have these issues in our society. So I thank you all so much. Please like, subscribe, and share this channel. We are so close to getting to how many views and viewers and subscribers that we need to continue going. And I will leave my Patreon as soon as that account is totally set up. Everyone can join on Patreon. And on Patreon, I'm able to talk about things a little bit more candidly than I am on YouTube. So thank you so much. It was great talking to you all. Can't wait to see you in the next episode. Don't forget, Monday, I have a great episode special just for you guys. And also check out my podcast, The Open Adoption Option, so you can hear about open adoption and understand what open adoption really is. And we'll see you all soon.